I think my ceiling is pretty big. I'm a student of the game. Just turned 20, and I think there's a lot more room, for me to get better. I want to be that, next superstar.
Paul Clifton Anthony George, born May 2nd, 1990. Hindsight is 2020, so it's easy to see over time how valuable an NBA player Paul George is and has been. He's one of the best players at his position in the NBA, which, as a small forward, is one of the toughest and most competitive positions to flourish in the league because, of course, comparisons to other great wing players and expectations to become your team's #1 guy and lead them to the promised land will always be just over the shoulder of a wing player that fits the mold of either Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or Kevin Durant. 3 different types of wings that all to follow fall under and are compared to at some point having to live up to the greatness those players demonstrated. When you mention the name Paul George, many mixed feelings about his game comes after it. From him being one of the best two-way players in the game for years, the perfect fit next to a superstar, a franchise player on the right team, all the way to him being unreliable, unable to get his team over the hump, overrated defender that's only good at reaching on defense, and of course, who can forget Pandemic P when fans flipped his self-given Playoff P nickname to reflect his NBA bubble run in 2020. Paul George has been on the negative side of some short straws over his basketball journey, but certainly far less than the great accomplishments he's had over that time, overcoming just about all you could to become an 8-time All-Star in 13 seasons, multiple All-NBA team selections, multiple defensive team selections as well, steals leader in 2019, and most improved 2013. He's averaged at least 20 points a game the last 8 seasons and shot 39% from 3 over that span, becoming one of the game's deadliest deep shooters. All that, and somehow he wasn't selected to the NBA 75th anniversary team, passed on for guys like Damian Lillard, whose selection I'm not displeased with, but feel at this point both have had just about the same achievements. And Reggie Miller, for example, who yes, is one of the more iconic players of his era and has some even more iconic moments in NBA history, but hasn't had close to the individual success as George, who for his career averages more points than Miller, more All-Stars, and they both shoot high 30s from 3 for their career. At this point in George's career, with 10th overall pick expectations, I think PG-13 is right where he should be and is low-key one of the more valuable players in the league. He fits with any player in any system, and with another superstar that can stay a little more healthy than Kawhi Leonard, George could be a key piece in winning a championship. He said this himself, and I agree. Should he manage to win one, Paul George should be remembered as one of the best players of his generation. 3 times Paul George hit a growth spurt and overcame possible setbacks on his way to becoming a star. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Paul George is a 6'8" small forward from Palmdale, California that wasn't highly regarded leaving high school. He grew up in a sports household where both his older sisters were high-level athletes and Paul followed suit. His freshman year was his first experience playing organized basketball, so you can say he was sort of a late bloomer. By his high school junior year, he began to become noticed more and more through AAU circuits and being given an increased role on the team as time went on. Santa Clara offered Paul early, so he verbally committed to them, as well as a commitment to Pepperdine a little later, both schools he decommitted from by the end of his senior year. He averaged 23 points and 11 assists that year, but wasn't selected for any of the premier end-of-school events like the McDonald's All-American Game or the Jordan Brand Classic. Rivals.com rated him the 20th best player of the 2008 class, as Georgetown, which would have been so cool with his name, and Penn State as well as Fresno State made offers. He chose Fresno State because he could come right in and play heavy minutes on a team that has made the NCAA tournament only 5 times in their 57-year history, none with George on the roster. SPURT number 1, Lottery from Fresno. The initial favor Paul received that set up his NBA career was somehow not just making the NBA, but being a top 10 lottery pick from a school like Fresno State that, like mentioned, are yearly one of the worst programs in the NCAA besides 2016 and 2001, their last appearances in the last 40 plus years. He could have went to a bigger school like Georgetown, which wouldn't have been a bad fit, but he chose a school that really wanted him, not far from home, and again, a school that really wanted him, which to me is something I always try to preach to anyone asking for advice as to what school they should attend. Always go for the place that you can feel really wants you and has the space on their roster, as well as the play style that best suits your game. Of course, every school you talk to just about are going to say that they love you and all the big plans they have for you. Then they go out and sign 3 more players at your position without consulting you. Then when you arrive, you see all these faces you hadn't planned for. But you can always tell whenever someone genuinely wants you in any relationship. Go with that one, because then, if nothing else, you'll enjoy your time there and have someone in your corner you can talk to and get help with transitioning to your new level. George translated quite nice his freshman year, being the team's second leading scorer behind junior Sylvester Say. The team wasn't winning much, but the year was a success for George, who shot 44% from 3, attempting over 4 a game. As a sophomore, he upped his scoring and free throw percentage significantly to 90%, taking over as the team's leader, but the Bulldogs were still a non-tournament team with a losing record. George decided to forego his final 2 years of eligibility and enter the NBA draft, where in individual workouts he was able to show his value and was a much better shooter, defender, and had a better attitude than the scouts thought, who criticized him for seeming lazy on the court when that is simply George's demeanor. Being taken by the Pacers with the 10th pick was a great spot to begin his career, as by year 2 he was a full-time starter and by year 3 he made his first All-Star. SPURT number 2, overcoming a severe injury. I've seen the Paul George injury during preparation for the 2014 World Cup a total of 1 time, and that's when watching it live because it's so gruesome and happened in such an unfortunate way. Also because at the time, the feeling around the injury was that Paul George would never return the same player. George was just starting to ascend in the league. He made his second All-Star by then and had his first season averaging at least 20 points a game and almost 2 steals. In a blue-white scrimmage getting ready for qualifying play, being the defender he is, he lunged for a fast break block on James Harden and landed awkwardly against the base of the basket and suffered a compound fracture on both bones in his lower right leg. His teammates and the rest of the world looked on in shock, and some in tears, knowing as players that could have been either one of them. To suffer an injury like that, when it's not like a health issue or natural injury players learn to expect, can affect a player sometimes more mentally than physically. He was expected to miss years of his career or even be done altogether. This happened summer 2014, and PG actually played in 6 games the following season. In his first full season back 2015-16, he was an All-Star and played in 81 games. For the next 4 seasons post-injury, he made the All-Star team and never fell off as one of the best two-way players in the NBA. Some might even say he came back much better than he ever was. SPURT number 3, Pandemic P criticism. After the injury, Paul George bounced right back and never looked hurt at all once he was cleared to play a full season. But soon after, the Pacers began making moves he didn't agree with and not informing him, like trading Danny Granger after he got hurt and trading George Hill, which made him feel if they could do it to those two, it may soon happen to him as well. He requested a trade and the Pacers granted it to OKC, where he could team up with Russell Westbrook. While there, the two were exciting to watch and PG continued to go up. In 2018-19, he had his best season, averaging 28 points a game, 8 rebounds, and 2.2 steals, all career highs. He took 10 threes a game and made 39% of them. George was a beast that year and probably at the pinnacle of his career. But it didn't work out in OKC as they just didn't have enough come playoff time to get over the hump and contend. After another trade request, he lands in LA to play with Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers. That year, he made a statement saying he was bringing out the playoff version of himself in the 2020 bubble, but instead had his worst playoff run since his third season, hitting the sides of backboards and all. Fans began calling him Pandemic P, and fittingly so. But yet again, George bounced back mentally and had a great 2021 playoff run, especially seeing he lost Kawhi Leonard while the series was tied 2-2 versus the Jazz in the second round. George lifted the Clippers the next game, scoring 37 points and 16 rebounds. In Game 6, he played 45 minutes and closed out the Jazz as the lone star player. Against the Bucks in the Western Conference Finals, he led his team winning 2 games before running out of gas and being defeated 2 games from the NBA Finals with Paul as their leader. He averaged 26 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists that playoff run, assuring he was still worthy of the name Playoff P. All in all, Paul George gets a lot of his critique, I think, because he has such an easygoing demeanor and everything seems to come so easy for him that you can assume he isn't doing enough. But he's had a great career, much more than expected when leaving high school and after being the man on losing teams at Fresno State. He's a great role model, has some of the best signature sneakers Nike has dropped in a while, and is still a great player after all he's been through. Salute, much respect to Paul George. For these reasons, he hit a much welcome growth spurt. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.